What is up, watchers? Thank you guys for tuning in. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from whenever you're watching. And if you're watching from the distant future, hi. Ever since I've discovered that I am an INTJ, I've become wildly fascinated about the topic and plunged myself into a lot of research. And to be transparent, it put a lot of things into perspective for me in terms of who I am and why I do the things that I do. If you haven't seen my previous video, you can see the link in the description, or you can click up here. The first video was about what happens in the mind of an INTJ. The second video was the weaknesses of an INTJ. And in this video, we're going to be talking about the 7 strengths of an INTJ. But before we begin, if you're new to the channel, hi, I'm Shane Easley. And if you like a different perspective on a lot of things in society, then consider subscribing to this channel. But with that being said, let's talk. Number 1, which comes at no surprise, INTJs are efficient and strategic. INTJs are technically gifted individuals. You'll find that INTJs are very analytical, pay attention to details, very methodical in their approach to many things, very mechanical. A lot of INTJs, you'd find they are typically perfectionists because we see a lot of the things that people typically don't see. This is usually the case because INTJs have a fundamental approach to things, trying to understand the why behind why things happen the way they do. It is why INTJs, whenever they're convicted of something, it is very difficult to change their minds, because many people argue their points from a very superficial or a surface level, while INTJs typically have a fundamental knowledge of anything before they're convicted of it. And if you want to change their mind on anything, you have to have a fundamental perspective in order to do that. And furthermore, INTJs are viewed as lazy sometimes, but it's not that we're lazy, it is that we find the most efficient way of accomplishing a task, using as least resources as possible to accomplish the most productivity. Number 2, INTJs are some of the most honest and loyal people you'll ever find. Now, there are a couple of reasons as to why this is the case. The first one is that INTJs usually have a very strong moral compass. This attribute prevents us from doing things that just doesn't feel right, like lying a lot or deceiving people. Now, of course, everyone lies at some point in their life, but for the most part, INTJs don't usually be dishonest because there isn't a reason to do that. People are usually dishonest because they either want to manipulate or they have regret of something. Manipulation is going to have conflict with our moral compass, and regret is something that we usually don't have because we only do things if we're convicted or we have a reason to do it. Rarely you'd find things happening arbitrarily for an INTJ. When it comes to loyalty, INTJs usually have very small circles. And as a result, the people who are within an INTJ circle all have a very specific function. Not saying that we're leeching on people, but we only have gainful and mutually beneficial relationships. Number 3, open-mindedness. This is one of my personal favorites, especially because people in today's society think that they're open-minded, but they really aren't. A very quick way to lose the respect of an INTJ is to demonstrate a limited mindset. Open-mindedness allows for the diversity of thinking and expression that generally fosters growth. And as you know, INTJs are very productive. We want to always see growth. And if there is none, then that is counterproductive to us. Really and truly, there isn't just one way to do something. There are multiple ways to do something. And furthermore, INTJs would have issues with the isms, as they're called, or we wouldn't understand them, like racism, sexism, all these type of things. They don't really make sense to us a lot of times, because they're all very limiting. You're likely going to find that INTJs, while we are very specific with certain things, we are a lot more tolerant than people realize. Number 4, INTJs are imaginative and innovative. A lot of these qualities all foster one specific thing: growth and progression. And this is one of the strengths that really embodies that. First, let's talk about imagination. We have this ability to create complex worlds within our minds that mimics reality itself. But not just mimics, but have very extravagant and exaggerated fantasies. A little more on that particular point a bit more in the video. Innovation is what INTJs always want to do, moving from one level to the next. And it's typically why INTJs are very, very good employees, because we add value to the work, taking the business from one level to the next, regardless of what it is. INTJs think outside the box a lot because we don't identify well with social norms. INTJs are usually contrarians as well. And this type of behavior fosters a level of innovation that you don't usually find in many other people. Number 5, INTJs don't see authority, or we aren't threatened by authority figures. This particular point usually lands us in hot water. I know it definitely has landed me in hot water. However, it has served as a rocket in terms of my career. When people meet authority figures, they usually do one of two things. They cower, or 2, overcompensate. While to an INTJ, you're just another human being. And that authority might only be seen as a resource to an INTJ. Not only that, but this attribute helps us to hold our own and thrive in very intense and intimidating or working well under pressure. We love a challenge. Number 6, able to see the bigger picture and accurately predict logical outcomes. This somewhat ties into number 4, which is imagination and innovation. Because we're so imaginative and we can create very complex worlds in our minds that mimics the real world but in a more exaggerated way, we're able to create hypotheses and scenarios in our minds that has real world applications or predictions. INTJs overthink everything, and in my perspective, it is always better to overthink than to underthink. It makes you more prepared. While it takes a lot of energy to overthink, it's something that's very natural to us. We're able to see the bigger picture because we have a very fundamental approach to things. And because of this whole imagination thing, we're able to see things not from a very macro level, but a wider view in terms of time and coverage. It is why I personally have a lot of issues with how people deal with things in social media. Have this tendency to do what feels right in the moment or say what sounds right in the moment, but not realize how much of an effect that action would have if it's adopted on the grand scheme of things, or perspective, if you will. Because INTJs are very goal-oriented, we do see the bigger picture. What happens in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, in 10 years, in 20 years from now. How that has an effect on things. And what makes it more interesting is that we have the ability to accurately predict these things. Because again, we're very analytical. We see everything and not just see it from a superficial level, but a fundamental level. It's the same reason as to why when you're good at one thing, you can be good at so many other things that are very similar to that thing. Which brings me to my 7th strength. Jack of all trades. You'll likely find that INTJs are jack of all trades, because being mechanical and analytical and methodical, these are all attributes that helps with a lot of different things in life. Life itself has a lot of rules and physics and these type of things. Because we understand it well, anything that requires a logical perspective or a procedural way of doing things, we're gonna always be instinctively good at. You'll find that INTJs might be good at math, sports, cooking, a bunch of different things. And not only because we're very methodical, but also we have this idea of being self-sufficient, not relying on external forces to accomplish tasks. One of the things that I always say is that I don't want to pay someone to do something that I can teach myself to do. Independence is a very important thing for us. And as a result, in any way we can, we're gonna learn to do things on our own. INTJs don't oftentimes get lonely. But that is pretty much it. Those are 7 strengths of an INTJ. There are some other videos about the INTJ archetype that I want to do. For example, I want to talk about dating and INTJs. I think that would be very interesting because INTJs are usually very clueless in the dating world. I can attest to that. And of course, very methodical. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video if you have, subscribe to the channel if you want to be a part of the watchers, and comment down below what do you think about these strengths that I have talked about. Do you have INTJ friends or family that may not have these strengths or may have these strengths? Share your experience down below. Share this video as well with an INTJ. It might do the same thing it did for me, for them, and that is put our actions into perspective. And again, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of whenever you're watching.